And now we look forward to leaning on you. If I could invite Marty and Stephanie to come up with and join me on stage. We encourage you to submit some questions. We promise you to try to have answers. Please use Poll Anywhere. I have one question to use to kick us off. Thank you. Actually, I have one question for each. So you got about, well, a couple minutes in order to send your thoughts. Stephanie. So it was an amazing story. I don't mean to be the cynic here, but how do you get landlords to give you their space, or do you have to pay for it, or like, how does that go with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say when we first started out, Ellen and I spammed probably all of the brokers in Boston. We called all the for lease signs, and it was a true struggle to convince someone to really let us, or I guess like to take that chance on us. But increasingly, as we've been able to prove ourselves and also prove how our engagement actually increases the value of these spaces, we've been able to partner with landlords. So oftentimes that may result in either a revenue share or a management sort of fee that we receive.
So there's like revenue sharing potential.
Exactly.
There's revenue sharing potential, I'm just saying. That's great, thank you. Marty, when you talked about the Met Warehouse and the Makerspace, it was inspiring to hear you talk about accessibility. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. I want everybody in the room to imagine that you sit in a wheelchair, and almost every tool that you want to use in the Makerspace has got all the controls way up here, right? Can you imagine the experience that you would have in that Makerspace? And then also the benches that you have to work on, you know, they're all at a height where when you're in that wheelchair, you're going to have to reach up and you're going to have to work like this, right? You know, what we're going to have to do to make that place accessible to everybody is to build tables that can move up and down and be adjusted, and then to figure out all the things that somebody that's of a different physical ability would have difficulty with. And then build into the space, and this is a great thing about it, is MIT people are going to have to build these things because you cannot buy them. To build into the spaces the ways that we help those students out, and then take that and port it out to other universities, so this makes it possible for students at other universities to do this as well.
Thank you. Stephanie, I have a question for you. The question from the audience in this case is, how do you evaluate the proposals you receive for art installations and events and so on, keeping in mind that my son is taking a drawing class? But how do you choose from among the various artists?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, like, we come from a stance that everybody has the ability to make art. I think we're incredibly optimistic, and also coming from a background of museums, sort of seeing how people treat art and feel like they could never make something like that is something we definitely want to discourage. I would say a lot of the things that we do really encourage collective making, so people coming together to make, to sort of participate in a larger experience, and that experience is something we curate heavily to make the experience feel positive. But yeah, I would say, like, we are open to a lot of proposals. We often help bridge the gap between someone's, you know, sort of, we help them do their first thing, if that makes sense.
Sure,
yeah.
Yes. So that's a bit taking a chance? Maybe?
Yeah, we take a chance. We take chances on a lot of people.
That's so bad. That's great. Marty, this question is, if you did, how did you convince students to leave their dorm rooms and start using community makerspaces again?
Oh, I didn't. So it was one of the first lessons I learned, is that you can't make the students do anything. This is the way to make that happen, though, and it's just to let the students lead. I mean, in the new kind of community makerspaces we're talking about, the majority of them are student-run. And actually, the very first one we built as a prototype, people were worried about safety, and so I hired an outside safety person to come in and do an analysis of a bunch of safety in a bunch of makerspaces at MIT. And that student-run facility, that community makerspace, was the only space that person evaluated. There's about 10 or 12 of them that didn't have a safety violation. Because, and this is important to the initial question you asked, it's the students that form the community that make other students want to come. And it's the students that set the culture, and the students know it needs to be safe. They really care about their fellow students working in those places. And so the answer is I don't do any of that. I just help to facilitate the students that do it.
I feel like I'm picking a tough question for me, if I could. And the question for Dave is, where's the data on the approach you described for helping students develop leadership traits? How do you know it's effective? And so it's actually a really great question. I think it's kind of an MIT question, which is good. There are two kinds of data. One is published data that comes from other people that's not from MIT, showing how traits have been able to be changed by people. The literature on that is growing. Probably the largest body of literature so far, at least that I've seen, is around empathy as a trait. The measurement of traits is a controversial topic in itself and probably takes too long for us to go through here. But that is one of the ways that we're led to believe that these approaches are effective. With respect to the specific students that go through these projects, though, we do self-report measures of their experiences. That is kind of what people do in measuring traits anyway. But I don't want to suggest to you that we're at the end of that path. We've, for a couple of years now, been working on better approaches to be able to measure the effectiveness in order to bring out to other schools this kind of approach to developing traits. But thank you for the question. Stephanie, do you have a way to measure the success of a Space Us installation?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we measure success, I guess there are a few ways that we do this, primarily because we have like a range of projects. So when we're turning an empty storefront into one of these spaces, oftentimes we basically look at a space, like look at a floor plan, and we look at ways that we're able to separate that space and sort of sub-license it, if you will. And we charge, I guess, we charge people to use the space. We have some of it is sponsored, or like we waive the fee. And I would say, like, broadly speaking, we look at the monthly revenue, and we compare it to what the monthly revenues are for neighboring spaces. So if we see that we're able to match sort of the prices that the landlord is asking for but isn't able to get, then we're able to demonstrate our value that way.
Thank you. So Marty, there's a question about products and businesses that have been launched based on, it says your current Makerspaces. Maybe if you interpret the question as you like.
Okay. So the Makerspaces that I run at MIT, there's a small subset. We run those with a specific focus on supporting the entrepreneurs and the innovators, but we're not doing the teaching of entrepreneurship and innovation. And it turns out actually that students that start businesses that require making, the typical path for them is they actually start in the Sloan School. There's the Martin Trust Center, and they're a partner with us, and so we help them build a makerspace in their entrepreneurship center. And so they start there in programs like Delta V and other programs of that nature. And then when they need to come, do more than 3D printing or laser cutting, they come to us where we have the heavy metalworking, electronics, et cetera. And so we really don't generate the companies out of our makerspaces. We're the support for them when we need it. And so basically we're like stage number 2 for the folks that come out of the Sloan School. And it's been really useful for us to build our makerspaces so they work together well. So if you get trained over in the Sloan spaces, you can come over to our spaces and you don't have to get retrained, right? And that's one of the things we learned for the entrepreneurs, because they're just not getting trained twice. But that's the way that we support entrepreneurship on campus.
Yeah. Can I just add
Sure.
what I think is a friendly amendment to that? You mentioned the Trust Center. A lot of the activity at MIT, it does have the outcome of developing very successful new products and new businesses, but the goal of MIT in those activities is typically education first, and to develop the entrepreneur more than the product. In part because, of course, the products change, but in part also because our purpose centrally is to help students learn to be the entrepreneurs that they will need to be, if not for a lifetime, at least for an extended period. And I think what you talked about spoke very
Exactly.
nicely
It
to
gets
that.
back to the issue of experience, right? As we support the experience of them, you know, getting, for example, their first prototype or starting their first startup. But mostly we work with folks over in the Trust Center and the Sloan School as far as this is concerned.
Yes, yep. There's another one that came for me, and it says, it's great that you're helping Sloan students develop traits like courage and resilience. How can I learn and develop these traits myself? Of course, we have programs at the MIT Sloan School of Management. It's a joke as a response. But I wanted to take only a minute to tell you something. I can't see hands very well, but how many people have sometime watched the original movie, The Wizard of Oz? Yes. So some. Okay. So it's a story about a girl, Kansas, a dog. She goes to some other place, and then she's trying to go home. And she needs help to get home. She gets help from the Scarecrow, who doesn't have very much intelligence. We're not going to talk more about the Scarecrow. But she also gets help from the Tin Man and from, that's right, the Cowardly Lion, and the Tin Man, who doesn't have a heart. So it's all a fantasy movie, of course. There's no connection with reality at all, except that these two entities, the Cowardly Lion and the Tin Man, chose to care about this individual, this girl, chose to try to help her in a setting where there was personal risk and danger for them. And in doing so, they called on something that in theory they didn't have. The lion didn't have courage, but had to protect this individual. The Tin Man didn't have empathy, but chose to put himself in a position where empathy was going to be called on. So the question to me was, how can we develop these traits ourselves? The opportunities to do that are all around every day. The Wizard of Oz wasn't a fantasy. It was a pre-scientific study of the ways, I just made that up, of the ways that traits are actually changed. And Frank Baum, who wrote the book, understood that before the psychologists did. So I'm going to stop there. So Stephanie, if I could. Send me an email, Victor. I'm happy to send you some more thoughts. Not about the film, about the. Stephanie, I'm going to paraphrase slightly if I could. The suburbs need help too. Is this also part of your vision, or can you talk about suburbs?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say suburbs are definitely on our radar, and I think part of what this platform was built for is really to handle the issues that we can't manage sort of day to day and sort of make it easy for someone in a place that might not be on our target list, but equally needs help. And we want to make it easy for everyone to sort of work together and make cities feel good again.
That's really great. Thank you. I get another question about how we know that this is working with the students. I don't mean to minimize it, but I have to answer. So the question is, you survey students, how do you control for students giving you only the information that you want to hear? It's awfully easy to give the expected answers and so on. So we don't actually tell them the purpose of the survey. They don't actually know that they're doing the projects for these purposes, and they're open-ended in what they write. So that's the last thing I'm going to say about the measurement of those traits for tonight. Maybe for both of you, if you would. So one of the things that people know about MIT, I think, is the commercial success that has come about through successful entrepreneurial activity from MIT itself. Would you say that there is, in addition, a trend of entrepreneurs focusing more on world improvement projects at MIT, or maybe projects that have a more clearly defined social impact? Is that something that you see on campus, or maybe just something people would like to see out of MIT?
Yeah, when I was when I was admitted into Delta V, first it was exciting to meet a bunch of people who I had never engaged with. If you know anything about architecture school, oftentimes you don't really see anybody outside of the course. And so going in to meet this new cohort of people, it was incredible to see how many people actually had a problem that they wanted to address rather than, just a solution that nobody wanted. And I think that that sort of reason to be is very crucial to, I guess, convincing others that you have that reason is very crucial in terms of getting support from the MIT entrepreneurial ecosystem, which I guess means, yes, I have noticed that a lot of people seem to be working on things that want to change the world for the better.
Yes.
Well, I've definitely seen more of that. I'll give you a good example. We had a student that came to us and said, I got this idea for these low-cost, warm kind of sleeping bags, and we want to make a bunch of them and then ship them off to help deal with the Syrian crisis. And so we said, well, what do you need? He said, I need a sewing machine. And that was all that this person needed. And so we made that available, and I can't remember how many hundreds of sleeping bags they made, but they did that. And I was talking to him one day, and I said, well, what was it that made you all decide to want to do that? And they said, it was obvious. We just watched the news, and people needed to be warm, and we knew how to do it, and we could do it. And I see examples of that all the time nowadays of students wanting to do things like that, especially students that want to spend time, for example, during the summers overseas in third world countries, rural areas. They take the making skills they learned at MIT, go over there, get started on a project, they come back to MIT, and then we see them in the makerspaces. And these community makerspaces are a great place for this to happen, because when they're doing that, it's not just like they're going to do that on their own, right? It's usually a team or a small community of people that want to jump on a problem like that. So the short answer is yes. I've seen more of that, and I've been really pleased with the tangible impact that we've seen from those sorts of activities.
So I hope this doesn't come across as a request for philanthropic support, but I think it's important just to note, relative to what each of you were saying, when people choose those kinds of activities, they often come to the Institute and ask for help that is financial help, that is beyond what otherwise would have been made available. They may need help for a summer activity that doesn't have any compensation associated with it. They may feel that to launch a social impact kind of venture, it's very difficult with even the substantial level of financial support that MIT offers. And so we are challenged sometimes to take that enthusiasm and to make it come alive, or help it come alive for the people that want that to happen. Thanks. Marty, when is this new Met Makerspace going to open?
Right now, we're in the early planning stages. And if the architects can keep to the schedule and construction, we're looking at late 2023 to early 2024. That's my best knowledge right now.
And is there, you mentioned, and people have not forgotten, that there will be alumni access to the space?
Oh, yeah.
Do they just send a letter to your home address or to your email? Or how does that access work right now?
Well, I'm happy to report you don't have to wait. There was a generous gift that came through the class of 1960, and we used those funds to build the prototypes of a couple of different facilities where we learn how we need to run this new Met Makerspace. So these are sort of like the early versions where we're trying out the ways that we're going to do programming and training, et cetera. And those spaces right now are open to alumni if they want to be a part of that community. Now, when the Met Makerspace comes online, it'll be as simple as hopping online, saying I'm an alumni, I want to come use the space, help me find a time to come do our orientation and training. And that's just it. Easy peasy, no friction whatsoever.
Marty, last question.
All right.
So how much does the new Met Makerspace cost to build?
A lot. Oh boy. You know, in order for this space to be independent and be able to do its job, right, not to succumb to the busyness of everyday life, etc., it needs to have its own financial support. There's a lot we have to do with equipment, a lot we have to do with just supporting the students that are going to volunteer to run it. I forgot to mention that. The students that run our student-run makerspaces, they all volunteer to run those spaces for their fellow students, right? And so we got to find ways to help them. Long story short, we have to endow that space. And that endowment is not a small endowment. We're talking about $20 to $30 million to make sure that we can endow the staff that are going to run it, continual upgrade of equipment, et cetera. And so, yeah, it's expensive, but I'll tell you this, if you hop on Google and you Google what all of our competitors are doing, they're spending way more money than that. So I'm saving everybody lots of money.
I know everyone appreciates that. Thank you. So that's all the time that we have for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you for really great questions. I hope you'll stick around, enjoying good conversation with friends. There is dessert both in the back of the room and outside in the foyer where you were earlier, and beverages. Please continue to enjoy the evening, and please continue to care about MIT. Thank you.